the Palace of Speed. The chaos early on in this race.
This is the Spec-5 World Tour on slow motion broadcasting. We're here at beautiful Watkins Glen International Raceway. Watkins Glen, nicknamed the Glen, is a racetrack located in the town of Dix, just southwest of Watkins Glen, New York, at the southern tip of Seneca Lake. It was long known around the world as the home of the Formula One United States Grand Prix, which it hosted from 1961 to 1980. The course was opened in 1956 to host auto races previously held on public roads in and around the village. This circuit's current layout has more or less been the same since 1971, with minor modifications after the fatal crashes of Francois Sever in 1973 and J.D. McDuffie in 1991. My name is Randall McGrew. I am joined in the booth by Alex Andersen, and we have Adam Thompson in our production booth. Watkins Glen MX-5, you can't ask for a much better combination than this. We should see some really good racing, a lot of slipstreaming. And Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, personally, I'm pretty excited for this race. I think it's going to be a great show of talent from these guys. It's always a show when they come to this historic racetrack, so I'm looking forward to it.
Right now, we're in qualifying on board with Rui Coimbra, who is one of the faster drivers in this league. We should see him have a pretty good time. He seems to struggle a little bit in qualifying, but turns it on during the race. In the points battle, we have a huge fight up front in the Pro Division. Ronnie Coates was able to secure a win last week for his first win of the season.
Oh.
And looks like we're having problems with some displaying the points, but I can assure you that the top four in the Pro Division are covered by only 10 points. Ronnie Coates, with his win, was able to actually jump Josh Soto to take that number 2 spot in the points battle. And then and I'm getting word in my ear that it's coming up here shortly. We'll go through those. But the top four are really, really tight. There's only a few races left, and things could get pretty hairy up front. Might see some more elbows out a little bit early.
Yeah, and we've seen that before in this series, and we've seen that before in a lot of other series on slow motion broadcasting. Aggressive early is a trait for a lot of drivers, but for a race like this, and especially at this kind of track, these guys are just going to have to try and buckle up and survive for 45 minutes just to hopefully be there at the end with a clean car.
So you see the points on the screen now. Rui Coimbra leads the points with 324. Ronnie Coates in P2 with 320. Josh Soto with 319. Mitchell Peak in fourth, only 10 points back from Coimbra with 314 points. Then is a much bigger gap back to fifth for Lee Martin. And in the open class, Sean Hayes has won the previous two events despite his unfortunate incident at Silverstone and has 4 wins on the season. He's padded that points lead out to almost 30 points.
Pop in. Hey, Randall, real quick here. I wanted to mention I did see one of the drivers popped in and let us know kind of why there is such a big points disparity in that open class. I was thinking that Sean Hayes was just winning everything. That is halfway incorrect. It's actually quite a bit closer because Sean has used both of his drop weeks for the season so far. So you've got to think that some of these guys, Ray Lombardi, for instance, hasn't used a single one. So this could actually make quite a bit of difference going into the last race of the season coming up here in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's absolutely right. The pressure is on for Sean Hayes. Every week has to be a good finish. He has to have a good race for the rest of the season, or he will fall victim to the drivers in P2 and P3 who are only separated by 1 point. Ray Lombardi, Josh Olson, only 1 point between them. So it's all to play for still on the podium of the open podium. We're going to jump on board with Edgar Santinelli. And Alex, would you like to take us on a lap around Watkins Glen?
Well, I just finished out of my league race, so I'm still loading into the session. So I'll let you do it for us around here. But it's a great lap around this place.
You see he's coming through the penultimate corner using all the track width. He's going to really open up the entry to the last corner. You want to get to the throttle very early here to maximize your speed down the front straightaway. Down the front straightaway is one of your best passing opportunities to set up a move coming out of the last corner, get a nice run with the slipstream, and outbrake your opponent into turn one. You're going to go all the way to the 200 board, brake hard, down to second gear, eat a lot of curb, and then run it wide, use all that curb out there on the exit. And then it's real fingertips driving through the S's. You want to keep the wheel as straight as possible while still making the turns, straighten them out as much as possible, trying to build as much momentum as you can. Going to rev out fourth gear for a very long time coming over this hill. You want it to almost be on the limiter before you even consider shifting, bringing the car to the left-hand side of the track to get ready for the bus stop chicane, also known as the inner loop. Going to brake at or just past the 300 board, eat a lot of the first curb, let the bouncing help you out. You see Edgar's having a little bit of problems keeping the car planted. Maybe got a little too much curb. And then through the sweeper, bring it in tight, get back to that throttle early, try to use the width of the track to your advantage, bring it back to the right to set up the run down into the boot. This is a very tricky corner. If you don't get over to the apex very early, this is exactly what happens. The car just washes out from underneath you and it understeers all the way to the outside and you lose a lot of time. Coming into the toe of the boot, you can brake much later here than you think. The uphill run helps you get the car slowed down and gives the front end a bit more grip. Another good run out of here is essential. Another passing zone coming into the heel of the boot as we see Edgar is now working the car, trying to get some heat into the tires, throwing away this lap. He's going to bring it back over to the left-hand side and open up the entry to the heel. You can really abuse the track limit here, really run wide. On this latest update, you got a lot more runoff. Then back onto the cup layout, a very tricky turn over the crest of the hill, where the transition there where it changes from the boot to the cup course, and it can really catch you out and cause you some oversteer. You want to just lift a little bit and not touch the brake through the penultimate corner, and then bring it back to the left-hand side. Get all the way over down onto that yellow line early, get back to that throttle, and have a good run down the front straight, and cross the line to complete a flying lap and to set up the next one.
Edgar Santinelli did a pretty good job there, just trying to just hold his line there, however, still stuck in 19th place. But I want to keep talking about the open class for 1 second, and that is to talk about the man currently sitting in 8th place right now, 4 positions away from any of his other competitors. That is Ethan Stanley, and he didn't race at Silverstone last week, but he was there for Monza, and if we can remember, Randall, he was one of the main players in that race. Just some unfortunate incidents through Parabolica messed him up a little bit, and the pit stops caught him off guard. You think Stanley can get around that today?
Oh, absolutely. Now that he's cut his teeth, as it were, at Monza and has a handle on the pit strategy and how the pits run here, he should have a much better race.
Yes, I'll have to see how he handles that. But here is your starting grid for tonight by over a 10th and a half, about a 10th and 3/4. Soto is going to take the pole here. Rui Coimbra starting right behind him there in second. Ronnie Coates there in third. Zach Burke in fourth. Mitchell Peak rounds out the top 5 in fifth. Simon Foweather in sixth. Otis Adams Jr. in seventh. Ethan Stanley way far ahead of any other of his open class competitors there starting in 8th. Tom Rath is there in 9th. Brian Zabelski in 10th. Lee Martin in 11th. Nicky Borovic in 12th. Coimbra in 14th. And Randall, I'm going to need you to take us through the... Oh, never mind. Ray Lombardi in 15th, I apologize. Josh Olson in 16th. Andrew Kosick in 17th. Greg Brockway in 18th. Edgar Santinelli in 19th. Bruce Silva in 20th. John Casey in 20th. Zach Gadberry in 22nd. Eugenio Polici in 23rd. And I believe there was Greg Mack rounding out our field in 24th. So we have a pretty good starting grid here tonight. We just have to see how this race plays out.
That's right. Qualifying position here isn't so important. This is a huge draft track, especially with any car, especially with these MX-5s. So just keeping your nose clean, saving fuel, make sure that you have the shortest pit stop possible is going to be the most important thing. This is another track where the leader's kind of a sitting duck, so I expect to see some swapping up front. I don't suspect that anybody will want to lead this for very long.
Yeah, but it's going to be a very close race between the drivers in the front of the field, as these guys will probably be fighting for every last position that they can get. Even though it's going to be early in this race, like you mentioned, Randall, it's a very draft-heavy track, and we do have a full pace lap around this place. So, just a couple things to go over. Pit stops. I don't have my notes pulled up right now, so I can't check when exactly they would be. But Randall, maybe you can hook us up with some info on that.
The pit window should be from lap 6 to about lap 13 or 14. You can probably get that extra lap out of it if you're saving fuel in the draft really well. They'll need about 2.85 gallons, and that's enough to get them a free side of tires, which will undoubtedly be the left-hand side.
Yeah, most certainly is a lot of the corners on this track. The left side, a lot of the corners on this track, the left sides are always at the most vulnerable, going through these twisty turns of the New England states here. So, as the field gets rolling, Randall, maybe some predictions from yourself on who you might see walk away with this.
Oh, it's going to be a real crapshoot who's going to win. This would be the road version of a restrictor plate race on oval. My prediction is there's going to be a lot of swapping up front. People are going to be jumping each other for positions a lot. Nobody's going to be able to break away. We may have a breakaway group if there's an incident early on, but it's going to be very hard for any one driver to break away from the rest of the pack.
Most certainly, and something that we need to go over is this bus stop, which you see the field going through right now. But this bus stop, you can see just how close the guardrail is to the entry curb right in the background up top there. It's a very treacherous corner, and especially with the way these guys race each other. We know how they race each other. It's very aggressive, very hard, but also very clean. How do you think they're going to tackle racing into the bus stop?
Well, if you're too wide going into the bus stop and you're on the outside, you know that you either need to back out as soon as that inside car is clear, tuck in, or leave a lot of space. If the inside car is going to be hitting that curb, so the bounce could cause the inside driver to bounce around and maybe come into you. So you need to leave a little bit of extra space to account for that. But I suspect, especially towards the last few laps, that we're going to see some very bold moves up the inside going into the bus stop.
Most certainly we are right about that. This race, we've seen these guys race here several times in the Spec-5 World Tour on this channel. We know it gets wild. We know it gets crazy, and I reckon it's going to be the exact same way tonight. Soto, Coimbra, Coates, Burke, Peak, Adams, Foweather, Stanley, Rath, Zabelski. It could literally be anybody in this field that walks away with the first place trophy at the end of this 45-minute race, because we know how the Spec-5 World Tour runs, and it is going to be a long and most certainly exciting 45-minute race as the field rounds the final couple of corners. Everybody raring to go. These cars aren't very fast, but you can hear the engine screaming and ready to fire off down into turn number 1. Through the last corner, the iRacing safety car is going to dive into the safety of the pit lane. Now, it's all up to the drivers as they await the green flag. The green flag is out, and we're racing at Watkins Glen. Soto takes the lead so far. He's got a nose out front over Rui Coimbra. Coimbra still, though, trying to fight back on the outside. Here comes Zach Burke trying to make the move into turn number 1. He'll get there off turn number 1, side by side with Rui Coimbra through the short chute, up through the S's. Simon Foweather following closely as well. Here comes Mitchell Peak and Ronnie Coates side by side through the S's. Zabelski falls back a little bit. Paulo Coimbra got in front of Stanley through that somehow. So now there's a race for the open class lead as well. But down the backstretch for the final time, Soto leads them as they head towards the bus stop.
What a start for Paulo Coimbra. Is able to jump all the way up to 8th place. You saw them fanning out going into turn 1. And here they come into the bus stop 2 by 2 by 2. And it looks like they're going to make it clean. Oh, I stand corrected. The commentator's curse strikes again. And that's Paulo Coimbra. Absolute heartbreak after a phenomenal start.
Not sure what happened to him. It looks like he just went completely sideways into the bus stop. He's racing with Stanley right here. He's got a teammate of Otis Adams right in front of him. Not sure how he might get hit here. It looks like, I can't tell, might have been, it looked like he bounced his rear tires off the curb, and slight contact from Stanley sends the 65 car around, and you gotta wonder, what are the stewards gonna think about that one? Here's another angle.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to say what the stewards are gonna call on that. It's lap 1. You expect things to happen. It looks like a racing incident for the most part. Ooh, very unlucky. He does get some help around from Ethan Stanley, but it does not look... That was definitely not in the playbook for either driver.
And the Quantum Threat driver might have to be worried about what's going to happen from him and the Marshals. So far, though, he's still racing just fine, but he still has Josh Olson to worry about. He's only 2 cars behind him with Tom Rath in between them. So, side by side for the lead. However, fight for who's going to lead the first lap. Soto's going to have the advantage coming through the final corner. He gets his nose out front by about a 10th. Soto's going to take the lead one more time on the first lap of this race. Zach Burke trying to go forward as well. Not able to make the front stretch to do it all over again. Soto still leads the field single file for the most part. Soto leads lap 1, but Coimbra's going for it once more into turn number 1. He's going to get him into turn number 1. Coimbra takes the lead for the second time this race. Can Soto pull off the over-under?
I don't know how long Soto's going to want to sit behind him. You are a bit of a sitting duck, and you're not able to save as much fuel in the lead, but you do get a bonus point for leading a lap and a bonus point for leading the most laps. So these two could be duking it out all race to see who's going to lead the most laps. But right now, it looks like Soto's just going to bump draft him and sit tight behind him for at least this lap.
Yeah, you could pretty much analyze the entire rear suspension system of that Miata with how close he was to the bumper of that car. But Zach Burke trying to go for P2 into the bus stop. He'll get P2 over Joshua Soto. Got a nice run with help from Simon Foweather down the back straightaway. Moves the 13 car up into P2 for the first time at this race, as it looks like Stanley's starting to get back up to the back bumper of Otis Adams Jr. So the field is still very much together. Pretty much the entire field separated by less than a second intervals, which is really impressive when you see what these guys are having to do when they go wheel to wheel. Very impressive racing so far. Only 3.5 minutes in, and it's already heating up.
That's what Watkins Glen brings you every race in any series. The power of the slipstream can make up for a small mistake in turn 1. You can get that gap, close back down, and you're going to be fighting with people the entire race.
Fighting with people the entire race indeed. Edgar Sancinelli, a lot of spots gained on the timing tower there. It shows P5. Josh Olson, however, a bit more impressive, bests that by 1 spot. Josh Olson currently up 6 spots, currently riding in line right behind Tom Rath. So a lot of spots gains for them. So far, Rui Coimbra still leads the field as they head to the final couple of corners to complete lap number 2 of this race.
And you also saw on there that Paulo Coimbra down 9 spots. He was originally up 6 spots, possibly even 7. So that's a 15 or 16 place shift just from that lap 1 incident.
So these guys, they file back down into turn number 1 here. It looked like there might have been a move. Looked like the 112 Ray Lombardi was thinking about going around Nicky Borovic, but they still stay single file for the most part. As it looks like Ray Lombardi, we know he's a very fast open driver. You think with him sitting back here really far behind his other open class competitors, you wonder if it's maybe just not in favor of his track likings when behind the wheel of that 112 car.
He could be saving fuel. He could be just biding his time and waiting for the right opportunity to start moving his way up. We see Sean Hayes looking into the inside of the 85 going into the bus stop, trying to make his way forward. Like we said in the intro, every race is an important race for Sean Hayes now since he's already used his drops. He's got to make up some spots quick.
Yeah, currently sitting P3 in the open class. Remember, there are no class points because of the same car being used throughout the field. So everybody fighting for the same points position. So Sean Hayes would get points for 13th. Meanwhile, Josh Olson would get points for 10th. So these guys, they really, all of the spots matter here tonight. But it looks like Zach Burke and Soto have both found their way around Rui Coimbra. I reckon that was made through the bus stop or maybe into the chute, entering the boot. However, Zach Burke leads the field now for the first time tonight. Joshua Soto probably going to have something to say about that as they get onto the brakes going into the heel. You're going to see how much they can stretch these track limits on exit there. Look at how much all 4 tires onto the curb. Look at how far Stanley went out back there. So these guys can use up really all the curb they want. And here comes Soto right on the back bumper. Oh, a bit of a slide out of the boot. Pretty big save, but also a very big moment from the 135 car.
And you see it again in the background from Edgar Sancinelli. That's that transition up onto the cup layout that I was telling you about. If you don't hit it just right, you can cause the back end to really step out. It was a good job that he gathered that car up and didn't lose much time.
Yeah, because the corner coming back onto the normal route, coming out of the boot, it is off camber. So these guys pretty much the exact opposite of sideways they'd want to be. It looks like Borovic having a bit of fun back there with the windshield wipers. Not sure what that's all about. A little bit of fun back there, I assume, from the 75 team. He's doing a pretty good job back there in P15, but likely wants to improve his spot.
He definitely wants to get ahead of some of these blue numbers, get up there with the other pros to try to get some points to get back into the fight, maybe try to gain some positions throughout the race. He could be saving fuel as well. It's very hard to call strategies around here as they're going 3 wide on the approach to the bus stop.
This is going to get hairy. Soto pulls the move of backing out. Coimbra gets the move done. Zach Burke can't really fight that. Great move from Rui Coimbra to take the lead of this race. However, we know it's not going to be over because it's Watkins Glen. These guys are going to be neck and neck like this the entire race. We're only 7.5 minutes in already. Very aggressive move there from Mitchell Peak. Almost sends Foweather around heading into the chute. Now they race towards the heel. That was a very aggressive and a pretty scary move from Mitchell Peak there.
It was a very aggressive attack, but it was also a very aggressive defense. It looked like Simon Foweather really pinched him down whenever he saw that the move was coming. So they're not playing around anymore. We're getting later in the season. The elbows are out. People are defending and attacking like crazy.
Here comes Rath going for a move around Stanley. I would reckon Stanley wants to defend this for his life because that would put him right in front of the crosshairs of Josh Olson right there, who is really going to want to try and get that win. However, Josh is fighting with Lee Martin, you see, as they head back onto the normal layout. Everybody going to maintain their spots. It only cost them about a little bit of time. Is Tom Rath going to maintain a 9th? Stanley going to maintain 8th. Just a little bit more breathing room between himself and Josh Olson.
He's not going to have breathing room for long. If he doesn't start to attack ahead, he's going to get attacked from behind. So he needs to make his moves now and start defending better, and try to get some space between him and Josh Olson.
And to do that, he needs to just maintain contact with this main pack, which Stanley has done so far in this race. However, Rath and Olsen have been doing the exact same thing. Coimbra now trying to hold off a hard-charging Zach Burke as they head up the S's once more. Mitchell Peak trying to look for a way around Foweather back there. Coates trying to follow him. Bit of an offline for a lot of these guys as they peek to the outside trying to get that run. Soto gets to the outside of Zach Burke. All the way to the inside goes Mitchell Peak. Foweather there to block him. 3 wide into the bus stop once more. Foweather gets it as they break into that corner. Rui Coimbra falls back almost to P6 from that. That is incredible. Foweather to the lead. Burke to second. In Soto to third. And Rui Coimbra all the way back down to P6 in one corner.
And I won't be surprised when Rui Coimbra drives back to the front here over the next couple laps. And this is what we're going to have every single lap. It's going to be a crapshoot who's going to come out in front in that bus stop until an incident kind of clears it up. Hopefully we don't have one. We can continue to see some really awesome close racing like this, but that was a very aggressive move from Simon Foweather. Very opportunistic, got a run, saw a hole, went for it, and is now going to have the lead coming towards the end of the lap. Maybe he can get a bonus point unless Zach Burke has something to say about it.
Yeah, here he comes to the inside, and real quick, while these two go wheel to wheel for the lead, I'd like to address that Tom Rath's last name is actually pronounced Rath J, so I'm going to try and do that as hard as I can. So here comes Rath J, trying through the off-camber corner to try and get a run on Stanley there. However, still not able to make the move. Foweather still holds on to the lead as well. Soto got around Zach Burke that time. Here comes Sancinelli. He's trying to get around Nicky Borovic, just maintaining P4, doing a great job back there in the open class.
And you saw that Zach Burke fell victim to Josh Soto. If you make a move and it doesn't stick, you're almost certainly going to get passed by the car behind you. So you have to be aggressive, but you also have to make sure that you're going to get that move done.
Most certainly is John Casey trying to get around to Andrew Kosick here, racing for P20 across the line. However, the battle is going to heat up once more up through the S's for the lead. Soto closing the gap to Foweather as they head up through the S's. Soto was a nice push from Zach Burke there. Those two really close on each other's bumper. It looked like Foweather trying to block the outside. Soto still gets his nose out there. They'll go wheel to wheel down the back straightaway. I think there was a hint of lift from Foweather there. Mitchell Peak there to push him down the straight. And here they come into the bus stop once more. Stanley going to take the lead. Everybody clean and green so far. Burke is going to get up to P2. Foweather falls back to P3. Here's Stanley trying to hold off Rathjay while simultaneously trying to get around Otis Adams Jr. through the carousel on lap 6 of this race. Randall, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe the pit window has opened this lap, and it's going to last from this lap to lap 13 or 14. So, you reckon anybody's going to come in this lap?
Oh, I highly doubt anybody pits this early. But every time I try to make a prediction about pit strategy, they prove me wrong. So I wouldn't be surprised if some do.
Hey,
but
Randall.
You're going to see most of them come in together, probably in 2 or 3 groups.
Randall, Alex, I want to ask this. I know I'm supposed to stay down here in my production booth, and I'll promise you guys I'll go back down there. But we're watching Ethan Stanley right now in 8th place. We're watching these battles up front, right? And it looks pretty awesome, right? As we see Burke almost trying to make a move there on Soto again. But I think it'd probably be scarier if I was back here in about 8th place, because you're trying to make moves, but at the same time, the draft is so powerful. I mean, we saw Foweather go from 5th place to 1st place in one lap. Imagine, I mean, I would assume, tell me if I'm wrong, Ethan Stanley back here in 8th is probably really feeling the pressure on both sides.
Well, you don't have time to feel the pressure or be scared. You are too busy trying to defend or trying to get positions, trying to stay in contact with the cars ahead of you. It's really, you're just too busy to have any thoughts other than what I'm going to do next.
Good observation there from Adam, but Randall, next time we really got to remember to unplug his microphone. However, Soto still leads the race over Zach Burke as they head up towards the S's one more time. And it looks like a bit of a gap is formed between Coimbra and Ronnie Coates. So those guys are going to have to try and work together to make up this time. Stanley's trying to hang on to Otis Adams Jr. as well as Lee Martin has fallen back from Tom Rathjay just a little bit. So these guys Stanley could be in a world of his own right here, but almost 4 wide going to the bus stop that time. Zach Burke going to take the lead, it looks like. Mitchell Peak takes 3rd. Soto down to 4th, Coates up to 5th, and just like that, the field is right back together.
And I know that the viewers can't hear this, but the sounds coming out of the production booth every time that the pack approaches the bus stop is truly entertaining, and that's exactly what it feels like every time these drivers, especially the leaders, start to go 2 or 3 wide. You just wonder if it's going to end in disaster. We saw almost a 5-car breakaway was starting to form there, and then they immediately started fighting for the lead, and 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th were able to catch back up because of that.
Yes, that's the one downside to racing for the lead, is it brings the entire pack just a little bit closer towards you. However, with the pit window open and everybody just fighting for as much laps led points as they can, it's a bit hard not to race for the lead, and I can understand why these guys are trying to duke it out so hard, but you gotta wonder, I would assume they're going to go in around lap maybe 9, 10, or 11, but when do you think they're going to pit, Randall? Because they're going to have to eventually, and just that's where this race is going to really start to heat up. Who can be the fastest on pit road?
So you may see that a bunch of cars will come in pretty late in the window, around lap 11, and then the rest of them will come the immediate lap after. I think I figured out a little bit of their strategy, as I think we're going to see Tom Rathje possibly pull into the pits this lap. Yes, he is. He's going to be the first of the pitters. He's going to be by himself, though, so he's really got to hope some other people come in soon so that he has a draft partner. But I think I figured out the tire strategy is the overlap is very powerful with the cold tires if people are taking tires. So if you can set one more lap and make it the fastest one of the day, you have a really good chance of gaining positions or possibly pulling away from your competition.
Most certainly, as it is an interesting strategy from Rathje, pitting all by himself. But we're about to witness another spectacle into the bus stop. Here's Foweather to the outside. I would reckon Mitchell Peak is thinking something of the likes as well. 3 wide once more. Actually, no, excuse me. Peak decides to push Zach Burke down this straightaway. They go side by side through the bus stop. Foweather still ends up with his nose out front. Way wide through there from Zach Burke. Side by side is Soto and Ronnie Coates. It looks like they're going to keep it clean through the carousel. Mitchell Peak almost falling out of that banking. That would be catastrophic for him. 3 wide through the chute. Stanley trying to throw his nose in there. Oh, and it's a big wreck. Otis Adams into the inside guardrail. Peak sent him in. Stanley gets out without a scratch. Everybody's scrambling to try and get out of the way. That was a major hit for Otis Adams Jr.
And I think this all started on the entry to the bus stop. Mitchell Peak was pushing Zach Burke and then missed his brake mark and ended up overshooting it just a little bit. I think he may have gotten a slowdown. It was trying to finish serving that slowdown, was a little bit off speed, and contact resulted after the carousel. And you saw Otis Adams Jr. there rolling backwards. Now, normally they say hold your brakes in an incident, but in the position that he was in, I think rolling backwards is actually a good thing, as it gave everybody that was coming at him just a little bit more time to make a reaction.
There's really nothing he could have done regardless. He hits the inside guardrail. He's going to slide back onto the track regardless, I would assume. And that really helped Ethan Stanley a lot. That moves him up 2 spots ahead of some of the best pro drivers in the field. And that also gives him a major gap between himself and Josh Olson. Coates comes into the pits that time all by his lonesome. So the pit cycle most certainly underway. We just have to see who comes in and when, because the strategy is going to start to form soon as these guys try and do their best to predict the future to give themselves a better shot at the end.
We saw Roddy Coates pull off the overcut last week. Now he's pitting this time. You think maybe he saw that Tom Rathje was pitting by himself. He's going to come out and have a dance partner. Maybe they can run some clean laps, just the two of them together, and maybe make up some time, gain some spots, or possibly have a little bit of a gap after the whole cycle works itself out.
And there's another race into the bus stop, judging off of those interval times. Soto gets around Foweather there. And that just really drew Rui Coimbra, Stanley Peak, Lee Martin, all of them, just drew them right back up into that field. They were falling back just a tad, but it brings them right back into the mix. Soto takes the lead once again as they head into the chute. We're still looking at Rathje here, heading up through the S's all by his lonesome. He has Ronnie Coates in front of him, so a little bit of lost time there from Rathje, trying to make the most of it. And really, just the main thing to wonder about at this stage in the race is when do these guys pit here? Here was the move that Soto made for the lead. It was almost another 3-wide move. Looks like Zach Burke tried to push Foweather, couldn't give him the best one. And as they break into the bus stop, Soto takes the lead, but I thought I saw Mitchell Peak and Ethan Stanley racing for a spot. Yes, they are, as they head into the heel of the boot, but all the while, this is costing them time to the lead cars in front of them, as Lee Martin trying to take advantage of this as well and make up a spot. Still side by side are these two drivers heading back onto the main circuit and out of the boot. You gotta wonder, this really isn't helping these guys at all. When do they decide to call it quits?
That's one of the hardest things to adapt to in the MX-5. It took me a long time to figure it out too. You got to know when to play nice so that a gap doesn't form, and you got to know when to attack. And sometimes the difference between the two is very, very small.
No lead cars into the pits that lap. Everybody still maintaining some spots. Here are some cars into the pits. Looks like Santinelli, Zabelski, Borovic are all in. Another car's in behind them. That's Greg Mack into the pits. So, 4 cars into the pits this time. So, you have to wonder, when do the lead guys come into the pits? They only have about 4 or 5 laps left to do it. Side by side for second are Zach Burke and Simon Foweather up through the S's as the field chases after them, hoping they race to try and make up some time here. Coimbra back by 5, Peak by 7 tenths, Stanley back by 7 tenths, as well as these guys try and just make up all the time they can. And if they race into the bus stop, it'll help them even more. And yes, they are going to race into the bus stops. Soto has to defend to the inside over Zach Burke. He'll end up retaining the lead through that corner.
Some of these laps are the most important about who's leading, because that bonus point for leading the most laps could come into pivotal play in the points championship. So Josh Soto now defending that lead, as we see the lead pack is dispersing a little bit, starting to spread out a little bit. I expect it'll be back together after the pit cycle. But you saw with Tom Rathje, the gap between Tom Rathje and Ronnie Coates, just the difference of one lap without slipstream, how much of a difference it can make.
I reckon these guys are going to have a hard time catching back up to the hard-charging, experienced pro drivers in front of them. Lee Martin leads the charge with Stanley right on his back bumper. I would assume Stanley just has to say, hey, let's not race each other. Let's just try and close this gap. And that is just going to be their main focus. They have to hope that those guys, their best shot is going to be if the leaders race into the bus stop. They'll be able to easily close the gap because the entire field is going to have to check up if they so choose to do that. The only downside is, will they do that? Because they won't get to the bus stop if they do pit this lap. We have to see what happens.
If the cars in front of you aren't fighting, you shouldn't be fighting. You have to stay in contact, or in this case, close that gap up. So any fighting here will be very detrimental to their race. Time lost here at this point in the race will be very difficult to make up after the pit stop.
2 cars into the pits that time. That was Foweather and Coimbra. So now it's just a 5-car race up front for the lead, separated by quite a big gap. Somebody almost spun out back there. That was Josh Olson racing with Sean Hayes off the final corner. Looks like Hayes is going to end up falling back. Josh Olson going to maintain that position as these two still neck and neck for the lead. Zach Burke trying to make that move around Joshua Soto. We'll have to see what he does, and if he does choose to go for it, up through the S's and towards the bus stop one more time. Zach Burke is going to dive to the inside. Soto might try and steal the slingshot from him around the outside. He's going to try and get that side draft. Zach Burke easily clears him for the lead as they head into the bus stop.
These are the most important laps of the race right now for Mitchell Peak. If he can close this gap up, he's going to make up some track position just by way of the slipstream, so that when he finally does pit, he probably has a better shot of being ahead of some of the competitors that were ahead of him before they stopped.
As here they come into the chute one more time, lap 11. You got to wonder, this is probably the best time for these guys to pit, would be this lap right here. The others being Foweather and Coates, as well as Coimbra and Rathje, they're going to be on colder tires than the guys in front of them. So to take advantage of that, I would say it's probably essential for these guys to pit this lap. However, they still have quite a bit of time left to decide it. There you see the first car out of the pits on a full fuel load is going to be Ronnie Coates with Simon Foweather right behind him. So I would assume that the best time for these guys to pit would probably be this lap.
Eugenio Politi has also made a pit stop. Now, I'm uncertain what lap that was on exactly. It looks like he pit on early, maybe from an incident or a pit start, possibly. So he's not actually going to be the effective leader. Right now, the effective leader of the race after the pit cycle is Ronnie Coates, unless these guys up front can really have a good pit stop and have managed to pull a gap. Now, running the tank to nearly empty does have the benefit of being lighter. You can go a little bit faster. So they may be waiting, but no, here comes a big group of cars. It looks like all the lead pack has come into the pits.
Now we'll just have to see where they end up when they leave the pits here, as Josh Olson, Sean Hayes, and Ray Lombardi all elect to stay out and just maintain another lap around the circuit. They can probably, if they've saved enough fuel, stay out until lap 14. But let's focus up on the leaders once more, as it looks like Coates and Foweather rounding the final corner right now. And Soto, Burks, Peak, Stanley, and Lee Martin, they're still all stationary in their pit stalls as those guys head down the front straightaway. Here's Simon Foweather. He's heading across the line right now. Those guys still just stopped in their pit stalls. Now they're free and trying to join it back into the race, but Coates is going to easily take the lead with Foweather right on his heels. Coimbra's with them as well, and that's a massive gap that those guys are going to have to try and make up. However, still in drafting range, so I wouldn't say it's completely over yet, but it's going to be very difficult to make up that time.
Once again, proving me wrong on thinking that I had the strategy figured out. My new pit strategy is going to be to pit whenever Ronnie Coates pits. He seems to have it figured out, and he seems to come out the winner every time on pit strategy.
However, the field is going to be hot on his heels. Everybody's still in drafting range, so they are going to be able to fight him for it just a little bit. The gaps between those lead cars quite large. However, they're still most certainly in contention with that slipstream, especially if the leaders start racing to the bus stop, because we've seen how big the gaps can get if they race to the bus stop. Here's Eugenio Politi, probably going to have to pit this time, as well as I assume the open drivers are probably going to do.
We'll see those three open drivers pit very soon. They have a nice little draft going, even though they're fighting with each other. They're making some good time. They may be able to come back in contact with the lead pack if they have worked this out well, but they're probably losing time fighting each other. So this lap is probably as good a lap as any to pull into the pits, unless somebody's trying to lead a lap.
That would be a big reason for somebody to stay out, but Olsen is going to come into the pits. However, Hayes and Lombardi still elect to stay out another lap as the field continues to try and close the gaps back up to one another between 8th and 16th place. Those guys still going to be racing for the lead. Politi and Paulo Coimbra also into the pits this time. Here comes Coates rounding the final couple of corners. I don't think those guys are going to get out in front of these lead drivers who are just going for it, who are just really going for it right now. Foweather right on the back bumper of Coates once again. Coimbra's right there with him. Soto will be up there with him soon using that slipstream, and he's towing a bunch more drivers right behind him. Rui Coimbra set the fastest lap that time by with a 2:09.7. Very quick from the driver of the 78, and you're seeing it right now as these guys are going to go side by side through the S's.
That's exactly what the cars in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and on back want to see. They need to see some side-by-side from these guys up front so they have a chance to catch up. The sooner they can catch up, the more time they have to get back to the front. The longer that these guys can keep it in order up front, though, the less time they'll have once the fighting starts in the last couple laps.
And now Coates just trying to feed these guys equal drafts so they go even into the bus stop to try and cost them time. That brings the gap between Mitchell Peak and all them under a second. So the gap still closing between everybody else. Here's Soto up with these guys now, currently racing Foweather for provisionally 3rd place, as the drivers in front of these guys have yet to come into the pits. So the race for the provisional lead is most certainly on in the final 17 minutes of this race.
If I'm Ronnie Coates, the number 135 is the last thing I want to see in my mirror. He's definitely going to be on the attack. It looks like Simon Foweather is off speed, possibly some damage or some sort of slowdown penalty that he's serving, but is just losing time like crazy, dropping like a stone on the leaderboard. Hopefully he can make this work again and get back up towards the front.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what these guys do as Foweather fell back quite a lot there. Stanley tried to make a move on him. These guys maintain a single file at the moment. And I'm not sure if I missed it there, but I didn't quite pick up on what happened to Simon Foweather there. Looked like he just straight fell back. Nothing major, no crashes, no spins, no off tracks, just straight fell back. Ray Lombardi elects to stay out one more time as Sean Hayes and Andrew Kosick into the pits. Zach Gadberry is slow to the final corner, I would assume. Yeah, there he is. He's coming into the pits as well, letting all the lead cars by. And here they go, side by side for the lead once more into turn number 1. Coimbra trying to go for it this time. Onto the brakes. It looks like Coates is going to let him have this one. However, that gap is going to start to close if they race really hard on the bus stop, which they are close enough to do this. So I would reckon they're going to go for it into the bus stop, and that could allow Tom Rathje and everybody behind him to start closing their gap back up to these lead cars.
1, 2, 3 on the track right now are 2, 3, and 4. Effectively 1, 2, 3 are also 1, 2, 3 in the points. We're going to see a real fight here. They're going to be definitely elbows out. Everybody wants to beat everybody.
3 wide into the bus stop. It looks like not a lot of time lost, so that was a very free move for everybody. That cycles Soto through to the lead once more tonight, as Rathje still trying to close the gap back up to Zach Burke. You see him going through the carousel in the background, a little bit further behind these guys. Him, Rathje, Stanley, Foweather, and Martin, they all need these guys to start racing for their spots if they want to make up the time. But the person who's probably most comfortable in this lead pack is the number 96 car of Ethan Stanley. Nothing to worry about, as he's way far ahead of any of his other open class competitors.
They just need to keep it cool and in control back here, and these 4 need to work together to try to close that gap, because we're getting to the point of the race that they're going to start fighting every lap again up front. So if they're going to have a chance to catch, they really need to keep it nice and in line and disciplined until they get back up there, and then they can join into the fray. As we see Ray Lombardi finally diving into the pits, the final pit stop of this race.
Everybody following each other off track through that corner there. Looks like Soto threw it out wide. Mitchell Peak really threw it out wide, almost hit the barrier. Oh, way wide through the second to last corner. Zach Burke trying to make the move to get in front of Mitchell Peak. And that just shows you how aggressive these guys are getting right now. And Tom Rath looks like, oh no, that's just the overlay glitching just a tad. There's Ray Lombardi falling, or Rathje, excuse me. There goes Ray Lombardi falling back to the field just a tad. And it looks like Stanley back there has realized that they need to stop fighting and start hustling forward in order to make sure that they can just maintain their spots and hopefully close the gap to the lead cars, because that battle for them is probably going to start to heat up going down the backstretch this time.
And we're going to see it's just going to get more and more intense every lap. The fight is going to be on for the rest of this race. We're not going to see any more cool, calm, and collective up front. Everybody's going to be fighting. Everybody's going to be trying to set themselves up to win this race. And they've been keeping it clean the whole time. Let's hope they continue that way.
Yeah, so here the battle just getting ever so closer, as it looks like there was a battle. Foweather got around Rath and Stanley, but that costed these guys a second, so not worth it at all, I would say. Just from being up here in the booth, not sure why Foweather being so aggressive. They still most certainly have a shot to catch up to the lead cars, especially when they're racing so closely.
Yeah, they really need to work together. Simon Foweather's been aggressive all race, so not 100% surprised that he decided to step out of line and try to get some spots. Maybe he feels that he's faster than Tom Rathje and has a better chance to pull them back up to the lead pack. As I'm seeing in the race chat, Lee Martin is even coming over on the text chat saying, work together. We need to work together. That's exactly what they need to do. Pick whoever's going to lead, let him lead, and let him pull you back up to that lead pack. Otherwise, you don't have a single shot at this.
So here they go. It looks like they tried to go side by side through that second to last corner there. These guys, however, Foweather starting to close the gap as they start to race more and more aggressively up towards the front. So almost 9/10 knocked out of the gap there. So these guys or these guys being those 4 cars you see in the back in this frame, are starting to close this gap ever so slowly, pretty much just using the way that the leaders are racing to their advantage. As the more and more the leaders race, the more and more those guys catch up to them.
And we've seen confirmation in the race chat. Ethan Stanley has agreed to work together. So that's 2 of the 4 cars. And most importantly, it's the 2 back of those 4 cars. So as long as Tom Rathje is patient with Simon Fullweather, they can do it. They can work together. And it's going to close every lap as we see them fighting once again for the lead going into the bus stop. This will cost them tenths every lap, and it won't take long for them to catch.
As you see the 4 drivers in the background pushing each other down that straightaway, they've realized that they have to start working together, and that's exactly what they're doing. The gap still continuing to close, but whenever they get to that back straightaway from turn 1 to the bus stop, that's where they just lose pretty much 7 tenths there, as the lead pack that has more cars with more draft just starts to pull away more and more, which means that they need to close that gap quickly and try and get in draft range if they really want to have a shot late in this race.
We see that the lead pack is fighting every corner. There's somebody defending or attacking every corner, it looks like. So they definitely still have a shot. Every time they see 2 wide ahead, it's got to be a good sign for them. Just keep it together. Work together. It'll work out.
And that's exactly what they have to do. Work together to try and catch up to these lead cars. Zach Burke and Ronnie Coates started racing for second there. That allowed Soto to pull away just a little bit from them, as the second pack still maintains single file through these last couple of corners. Here's a bit of a battle back behind these guys. Greg Mack and Olsen going at it through the off-camber corner out of the boot. Olsen going to end up with the better of that position. Off track, though, and almost into the barrier. Greg Mack swings it out wide, trying to miss him. He'll be able to pull that off successfully and take away P12 from Josh Olsen. However, Josh still going for it. Tried to get to the inside to the final corner. Couldn't quite get it done.
And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Sean Hayes is all the way down in 23rd without even a sniff of slipstream for the cars ahead of him. This is not a good result for Sean Hayes. I wonder if he had some issues with the pit stop. Maybe it had an issue on his own where he lost some time and just lost contact. Maybe that late pit stop just sealed his doom and didn't have a good draft coming out of there. So he has a couple cars ahead of him. Maybe he can get a couple spots back. This is not what Sean Hayes needed right now.
Most certainly, especially with his point situation. It's going to be a massive gain for drivers like Olsen, Sancinelli, Bruce Silva, and Ray Lombardi. However, the battle's still on for this lead.
And we've lost Zach Burke.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm not sure what happened to him. It doesn't look like it. Yeah, it looks like he's just left the session. Doesn't say anything on my iRacing, so I guess he's just abruptly left the session, and that is going to really start to hurt this main pack, as now these two groups of cars are even in terms of drafting power.
They're even in terms of drafting power, but that gap between the groups is 1 car bigger. So now there's only 4 cars in the lead pack. The gap is going to increase just a little bit. They're going to have to work a little bit harder to get some slipstream. And up front, these top 3, it's important every lap who's led. They're going to be fighting for most laps led. They've all 3 led a lap, so that makes them even on bonus points right now. Whoever leads the most is going to get an advantage.
Yeah, most certainly. So you see that second pack, it looked like Fullweather is just trying to do it on his own now, starting to pull away from Tom Rathje there. Just 7 minutes remaining in this race for these guys to make moves. It's about a 2-minute and 10-second lap. So I'm going with maybe 4 or 5 laps for these guys to try and get around each other. Maybe even 3 or 4 laps for these guys to settle themselves out and decide who wins this race. And the battle is just going to start ramping up so much more than even we've seen out here throughout this race. And the battle has seemed so close and so aggressive so far. They're about to turn it up to level 10 here in a moment.
And it's going to become harder and harder for those drivers in that second pack to work together. They're going to see the lead pack slipping away from them, the chances dwindling. they might start fighting for positions, but they really need to wait until the last lap to completely sign off on not having a chance to get back up to the front. As they're going 3 wide into the bus stop, they all work it out again, clean through there once again, but they're fighting every single lap.
Yeah, this Coates going to be the man to try and track down Rui Coimbra. Now, Soto fell back to third through the bus stop that time by. Soto trying to give him a shove there. Now he's going to dive bomb him into the chute here, entering the boot there. Rui Coimbra is loving this in his mirror. However, the race not even close to over as the draft going to draw them right back to each other. And now, with the way that gap's looking, I don't think that second pack can catch up to these guys. It's now up to pretty much 3.5 seconds for them.
That's right. I mean, they can still hope there could be an incident in this lead group that can really help them close the gap. As the laps tick by, they're going to fight harder and harder up front, though. So you really just need to be patient. Your instincts are going to be telling you it's over. I have to fight for whatever spots I can get now, but there's always a chance. And you're not going to be able to pull away from the other cars in that pack. So just be patient. Wait till the last lap. Let it all shake out.
Here's a battle between Sancinelli and Ray Lombardi going into the heel of the boot. Looks like Sancinelli going to try and make it stick around the outside. He will. Bruce Silva trying to take advantage of it down the inside, coming out of the boot here. Looks like Ray Lombardi trying to get that run off the outside there. He'll stay in front of Bruce Silva as these guys head towards the final couple of corners. And with under 5 minutes left in the race, it's really starting to heat up for the lead, almost to the point where Mitchell Peak turns himself around. Great save from the driver of that 56 car, but that's going to make it now a 3-car battle for the lead and the win of this race, as it looks like Mitchell Peak just too aggressive on the brakes.
This could be the bridge that second group needs to catch back up to the leaders, though. Mitchell Peak not so far off that he can't get back to that draft if these guys fight even just now. But he could give them a bit of hope as 3 wide again for the leaders.
Joshua Soto not scared at all to pull a move through the middle like he just did, and he pulled out a lot of time to go along with it. Very aggressive and very risky, but overall that move paid off for him as he heads into the chute. And like you mentioned, Randall, just that little bit of fighting drew Mitchell Peak back in a drafting range. He just needs to maintain it until the next big drafting spot. And Ronnie Coates fell back a little bit, but he'll have the draft to catch back up as well.
We'll be back on again by the time they get back around to the bus stop. Right now, it seems like they're playing chicken with each other approaching the bus stop, and Josh Soto seems to keep coming out the winner. But as we get closer and closer to that final lap, those other drivers are going to get braver and braver. So who's going to win the ultimate game of chicken on that white flag lap?
Definitely looks like a bit of a race back there in that second pack. Foweather trying to go forward around Stanley as Rathje now leading this pack. Foweather to the inside through the heel. They almost make contact as they head towards the exit of the boot. Stanley, the open driver, trying to fight back on the inside against the more experienced pros all around him. Not able to clear him just yet. They're still side by side through the final couple of corners. Stanley still has his nose out front. We have to see if Foweather can get that advantage through the final one. Here they come. They're still side by side. Foweather on the advantage now. Gets his nose out in front as they turn into the corner. Stanley still trying to fight back on the outside. They're still side by side down the front straightaway. Who does Lee Martin go with in this battle? Looks like he's going to try and go 3 wide, deciding who to push here. He ends up maintaining pace with Stanley. Stanley has his nose out front through turn number 1. Very aggressive onto the brakes for... That was Simon Foweather. He ends up going out wide. Stanley gets back to the inside of him up through the S's. And these guys are still side by side fighting for it. It looks like Stanley finally gets clear of him up through the S's.
It's looking like a lot like their NASCAR counterparts fighting 2 wide through the back half of the lap. You see that a lot of times from the Cup drivers, and it is not going to work out for them. They're going to lose so much time to the cars ahead. As you can see, Tom Rathje has pulled a gap on them, and he's trying to break that slipstream so that he has that spot all to himself.
Into the bus stop they come at once more. Stanley, sideways. What a save from the driver of the 96 machine. That was impressive. Onto the grass, entering the bus stop. Sends it sideways, saves the car, and almost slams into the wall in the exit of the carousel. Stanley getting careless on on the second to last lap, I assume, of this race, side by side for the lead. Soto gets him from Ronnie Coates as they head through the toe of the boot, down the short chute between the toe and the heel, side by side once more. Coates trying to go for it. Here they come into the heel as this race just gets more and more insane on the second to last lap.
We've seen a lot of attack out of Josh Soto throughout this season. Now we're going to see how well he defends. Though he lost the spot to Ronnie Coates, I expect that he's going to make that move to get back into the lead again and probably try to form a wall with that MX-5.
Ooh, Mitchell Peak wide once more, and that time it sends him into the barrier. He'll have to try and be on the comeback side of things if he wants to make a move for the lead, but through the final corner, Ronnie Coates is gonna come around the final corner. He'll collect the white flag for this field. Stanley still racing with Simon Foweather for position here. That's for P6, but Ronnie Coates collects the white flag and the race is on for the lead.
I expect full attack out of all four of these drivers. I suspect that Mitchell Peak is seeing red about now, trying to claw that gap back up after that incident in turn 1. I fully expect him to be involved in that battle going into the bus stop.
And here they come up through the S's. Soto trying to close that gap using that draft for the final time as here we go down the back straightaway. This will be the best passing opportunity for these guys. Soto gets the outside. Oh no! Soto around, collects Ronnie Coates. Rui Coimbra is going to run away with this one as that is a massive accident on the last lap. Everybody scrambles around him. A 3-car wreck. Coimbra has to serve the slowdown. Rat J leads into the carousel. Simon Foweather now has to try and close the gap.
And that's what I kept saying this entire time since the pit cycle. The second group needed to work together because you never know what's going to happen. Wait for that white flag. Wait for it all to shake out. Now Tom Rathje has a big gap. It's going to be very hard for Foweather to close that up in these remaining corners.
I am speechless. Foweather now has to try and close gap to Rathje through the toe of the boot for the final time. Stanley watching the battle between the pros right in front of his eyes. Through the back straight of the boot, Rathje tries to break the draft as they head towards the heel for the last time this race. I don't know if Foweather's going to have enough. Onto the brakes, they come into the heel for the final time.
And oddly enough, Mitchell Peak was the one out of the lead four that gained the most out of this. He only lost one spot. So by only losing one spot, he gains the most.
Foweather gets that gap under 5/10
Oh,
as
no.
they race towards the final two corners. That's a car off track. Sancinelli pretty much out of this race into the heel, but through the final two corners, Rathje trying to hang on. He goes wide. He comes to the final corner. So much drama and controversy on the final lap, but Rathje is going to end up with the win over Simon Foweather across the line. Stanley into third, Lee Martin in fifth, Mitchell Peak in P5. Recovering from that, you can see the destroyed front end of that car. Brian Zabelski P6, Nicky Borovic in 7th, Greg Mack in 8th, Ray Lombardi P9 there, Olsen across the line, Silva as well. Here comes Adams, Paulo Coimbra, and Polici. Sancinelli through the final corner, and now we're just waiting for the back half of the field. And real fast, before we get to your post-race activities, we have one sponsor read to do tonight, and that is for TPC Motorsports, which is a 4-year-old racing team based in Birmingham, Alabama, that currently races a Caterham 7420R in the HSR series and a BMW Spec E46. So a big shout out to them for sticking their neck out of the woods and supporting the Spec-5 World Tour, letting us see incredible action like this on the regular. But I am absolutely speechless, Randall. That was incredible.
And really importantly, we have an open class driver on the podium, the overall podium, in P3. As we're going to see a replay of this incident, we have all three cars in a line, starting to fan out as they come onto the straight, and it looks like Rui Coimbra tries to get a little push in on Josh Soto that sends him around, just got to his bumper at the absolute wrong time, collects Ronnie Coates, collects Mitchell Peak. They all four end up in the barrier. Sorry, three of them end up in the barrier. Rui Coimbra manages to escape cleanly. and then I'm unsure why he stopped. I don't think that he would have had a penalty for this. So
I believe
very
maybe
odd.
just trying to do the gentleman driver thing of coming to a stop when he realized he made a little bit of a mistake there. Very gentleman thing, maybe a bit of a stop and go from Rui Coimbra there. Continues to roll. He tries to roll out of the bus stop, but I think he just towed it back to the pits there. But as we pull up your race results, Randall, if you would like to take us through them real quick, here they are.
Your surprise winner for the night is Tom Rathje, winning overall, the first car to pit, the first car to cross the start-finish line to take the checkered flag. Simon Fullweather ends up P2. Ethan Stanley, P1 in the open class, P3 overall. Lee Martin, P4. Mitchell Peak makes the best out of those lead four, and comes home fifth. Brian Sabelski in sixth. Nicky Borovic in seventh. Greg Mack in eighth. Ray Lombardi, who had a bit of an incident with Edgar Santinelli there in the closing stages of that race. You have to wonder maybe if he'll get a penalty and end up a little bit lower than where he is now in ninth. Josh Olson in 10th. Bruce Silva had a very quiet race with a very good finish in P11. Otis Adam Jr., we saw him with an incident early on, manages to bring it home in 12th. Paulo Coimbra, after a absolutely bonkers start, then has an incident in the bus stop, drops all the way down to as far as 19th, comes home 13th. Eugenio Polici, P14. Edgar Santinelli, P15. Andrew Kosick in 16th. Sean Hayes, 17th. Ronnie Coates, after being in front most of this race, ends up coming home 18th. John Casey, 19th. Rui Coimbra, also involved in that last lap incident, P20. Zach Gadberry, P21. Greg Brockway, P22. Josh Soto, who I believe has the most laps led for this race, P23. Zach Burke, who was up there in the mix for a long time before the pit stops, in P24. And I don't believe Sean Ruiz took to the grid, but he comes home P25.
So, I am just still trying to collect myself after that. That was absolutely insane. But we need some interviews to head to. So I'm gonna drag in what I assume is the first person to ever win the open class and finish on the podium in the open class, and that man is Ethan Stanley. Hell of a job, man. How'd you pull that one off?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting a podium. It just kind of fell into my hands at the end there, but I mean, it was a great race for me. Kind of had a bit of a accident on the first lap, but that is what it is. And I was able to just keep my nose clean, and I was really competitive with the guys up front.
Yeah, you did a great job behind the wheel of that number 96 Quantum Threat Miata. And I mean, through the middle portion of that race, I know you guys, you were at least trying to catch up to the faster drivers in front of you. How was it back there to try and close that gap?
I mean, it kind of felt like you didn't really have a chance there, but every once in a while you see a 10th come your way, and just got to keep pushing. Try to work together as a group a little bit, and work your way up to those guys. But it was good in the end.
All right. Well, before we let you go, congrats on the podium. And anybody you want to thank here before we let you go?
I mean, thanks to everybody that makes this happen, my team as well as my team, all my sponsors. That's about it. Not gonna really plug anything else.
All right. Well, we'll let you go for tonight. Congrats on the win, man. I'll probably talk to you in a few minutes. So, congrats on the win, and I'll see you later. We'll see you later.
Thanks.
All right. I'm gonna drag him back. And Randall, who have you managed to find out here for us to talk to?
Surprisingly enough, we have Tom Rathje, who I honestly didn't think we'll be talking to tonight. Tom, are you as surprised as we are about the result of this race and coming home first?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I was going to get taken out too.
Well, I was worried you were going to be hung out to dry there when you were the first one to pit and you were all by yourself, but it ends up paying off in the end. Tell us about your thoughts there, trying to close that gap to the lead cars ahead of you.
Well, I thought I might have a chance to catch up on those guys. I actually jump them in the pit, but I ended up what I thought was taking too much gas, but it ended up being just enough because after I crossed the start-finish line, I started burping right after T1. So fortunately, I didn't under fuel. But I was looking at the lap times, and we weren't going super fast as a group. And I was just like, I wanted to get out of here before we had a little, get together somewhere on the track,
So tell me what went through your head when you saw the incident unfold ahead of you.
I was like, okay, how many guys are going? And I'm like, okay, that's 1, 2. Oh, wait, is there anybody left? I'm like, oh man, don't mess up. So then when I'm in the outer loop, I'm like, breathe off the throttle. I thought I was going to put myself out in the guardrail. My left sides are pretty much gone by then.
Well, is there anybody you'd like to shout out or thank after your victory here at Watkins Glen?
Yeah, sponsors on the car, Ace Performance out of Tewksbury, Mass. Guys always took care of me, and so running their livery now. So, those are the guys I want to call out. And then, Slow Motion Broadcasting, doing the job you guys do. I know I have friends that like to watch it, and so appreciate everything you guys do. And a big shout out to Jordy. He's going through some tough stuff right now. We're all thinking about him. Big prayer. So. Hang in there, buddy.
We'll all keep Jordy in our thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
And congratulations on your win. You led the only lap that really mattered, the last one. And maybe we'll see you up here again before the season ends with another one.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And that was your race winner, Tom Rathje. Alex, what a race.
Even 5 minutes after the race ended, I'm still trying to collect myself. I quite literally cannot believe what I just watched, but what can you say? It's the Spec-5 World Tour at Watkins Glen. Never fails to disappoint when they head to this racetrack, so super happy I got to watch that up here. Randall, what was your take on it?
Well, these guys deliver once again. It seems like I'm saying what a race after every race. These guys are always putting on a good show, having lots of fighting, always very clean. So to see it ending like that is definitely an anomaly with these guys. So, once again, what a race.
Most certainly. But Randall, if no more final thoughts from you, that's going to do it for us. Oh, excuse me, real quick, before I sign off. Wow, I almost forgot. Upcoming streams this Sunday, 9 a.m. EST, the second race. Oh, wait, that's not updated. Excuse me. So, real fast. Real quick, I mean, that was just an absolutely incredible race. I mean,
Patience. Yes. I kept telling the second group needs to work together. And you knew that something was going to come, and it finally did, and Tom Rathje was just in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, he most certainly was. That was just one of the most incredible finishes I've seen from this series. I mean, we've seen what happens at Watkins Glen in this series, but that was just absolutely insane. But upcoming streams this Sunday, October 2nd at 8:10 p.m. EST. The XSLR Championship returns with the Legacy 2008 Chevrolet Silverado NASCAR trucks at the 2008 Charlotte Motor Speedway. Going to be their first and only mile and a half. Definitely going to be interesting. Then WSRL returns with the LMP2s and GT3s at Watkins Glen, where we were here tonight. We'll probably see another incredible finish from them. At the same time, the SBO Network's American Muscle Series is going to have another race. This time it's one of their only 60-minute races at the Nürburgring combined in those Mustangs. The WSRL IndyCar Series runs its first race, if I'm not mistaken, at Road America next Thursday. Running alongside that is going to be the Spec-5 World Tour when we return from Suzuka. But that's going to do it for us. My name is Alex Andersen. I have been joined in the commentary booth by Randall McGrew with Adam Thompson in our virtual production truck. And for Race 8 of the Spec-5 World Tour from Watkins Glen International, have a good night.